Most people remember the big names of Nazi Germany, Hitler, Himmler, Goebbels, but there's one man who quietly commanded the seas, unleashed terror across the Atlantic, and eventually became Hitler's chosen successor. His name was Karl Dönitz. What did the man who led Germany's deadly submarine fleet actually do each day? Was he truly just a military professional? Or was he something far more sinister? Let's dive beneath the surface and discover the daily life of the man who ruled the U-boats. Karl Dönitz was a creature of routine and discipline. Unlike many Nazi leaders who lived in luxury and excess, Donitz saw himself as a true naval officer, a man of the sea. His morning started early, usually around 6 a.m. He believed in military precision, and his day reflected that rigid structure. The first thing he did each morning was exercise. Nothing elaborate, just basic calisthenics and stretching. He wanted to stay fit and sharp, even as he aged. Physical weakness was something he despised. After his brief workout, Donitz would wash, dress in his crisp naval uniform, and sit down for a simple breakfast, usually black coffee, bread, butter, and perhaps some cheese or cold cuts. He ate quickly and efficiently. Food was fuel, nothing more. He had no time for the long, indulgent meals that Hitler enjoyed. Donitz was already thinking about the war, about his submarines, about the ships they would hunt that day. By 7:30 a.m., Donitz was at his desk. Whether he was at his headquarters in occupied France, later in Berlin, or aboard his command ship, the routine never changed. The first order of business was always the same: reports, dozens of them. Throughout the night, his U-boats had been prowling the Atlantic Ocean, hunting Allied convoys that carried supplies, troops, and weapons from America to Britain. Each submarine commander sent back coded messages about their positions, their targets, and their kills. Donitz read every single report personally. He didn't delegate this task. He wanted to know exactly where each of his submarines was, what they were doing, and how successful they were. He studied maps covered with tiny markers representing his wolf packs, groups of U-boats that hunted together like predators stalking prey. He would move the markers around, calculating distances, plotting intercept courses, deciding which submarines should attack which convoys. This wasn't just military strategy. This was economic warfare designed to starve Britain into submission. Donitz's U-boats didn't just sink warships. They sank cargo ships, oil tankers, and supply vessels. They sent thousands of merchant sailors to the bottom of the ocean. Many of these men died slow, horrible deaths, freezing in the water or drowning as their ships went down. Donitz knew this. He understood the human cost. And he didn't care. To him, it was simply war. What most people don't know is how personally involved Donitz, D-U-H-Nitz, was in the U-boat war. He wasn't some distant commander giving vague orders. He knew many of his submarine captains by name. He read their reports, praised their successes, and mourned their losses. When a U-boat failed to return, which happened more and more as the war went on, Donitz would mark it as lost and move on. But privately, these losses ate at him. He saw his submariners as his sons, his boys, yet he kept sending them out, knowing that fewer and fewer would come back. By mid-morning, Donitz would hold meetings with his staff officers. These sessions could last for hours. They discussed tactics, new technologies, and intelligence reports about Allied defenses. Donitz was obsessed with improving his U-boats. He pushed for faster submarines, better torpedoes, and new ways to evade enemy detection. He was a technical innovator, always looking for an edge. One of his most significant contributions was the development of the wolf pack tactic. Instead of having submarines hunt alone, Donitz coordinated groups of U-boats to attack convoys simultaneously from multiple directions. This overwhelmed the convoy escorts and led to devastating losses for Allied shipping. He would spend hours at his plotting table orchestrating these attacks like a conductor leading an orchestra of death. He tracked weather patterns, moon phases, and convoy schedules with meticulous detail. Donitz also personally reviewed every aspect of U-boat design and crew training. He visited shipyards to inspect new submarines under construction, demanding modifications based on feedback from his captains. He established rigorous training programs for submarine crews, knowing that even the best technology was useless without skilled operators. He created specialized schools where men learned to operate in the claustrophobic, dangerous environment of a submarine. These vessels were essentially steel coffins. They were cramped, smelly, and terrifying. One depth charge could crush the hull and kill everyone inside instantly. Yet Donitz demanded absolute perfection from his crews. But here's where things get darker. Donitz was not just a military professional doing his duty. He was a committed Nazi. He believed in Hitler's vision for Germany and supported the regime fully. In speeches to his men, he often spoke about loyalty to the Führer, about fighting for the survival of the German race, and about the need for total commitment to National Socialism. He wasn't forced to say these things. He meant them. Donitz also knew about and supported the Holocaust. While he didn't personally operate concentration camps, he was fully aware of what was happening. He never spoke out against it. He never questioned it. In fact, he actively worked to remove Jewish sailors and personnel from the Navy. He issued orders that aligned with Nazi racial policies and enforced them without hesitation. This wasn't a man who was just following orders. He was a true believer. Lunch was usually around noon, and like breakfast, it was quick and functional. Donitz might eat at his desk while continuing to work, or he would join his senior officers in a small dining room. The meals were simple, typically German military fare: potatoes, vegetables, meat, bread. He didn't drink alcohol during the day. He needed to stay focused. His mind was always on the war, always on the next operation. In the afternoons, Donitz often traveled. He visited submarine bases along the French coast, places like Lorient, Brest, and Saint-Nazaire. These bases were heavily fortified with massive concrete bunkers that protected the U-boats from Allied bombing raids. When Donitz arrived, it was a major event. He would inspect the submarines, talk to the crews, and give speeches. His speeches were powerful. He spoke with conviction and passion. He told his young submariners that they were Germany's elite warriors, that the fate of the nation rested on their shoulders. He praised their courage and sacrifice. He told them they were fighting for their families, for their homeland, for their future. And then he sent them out to die. Many of the men who served under Donitz genuinely loved him. He had a talent for making each sailor feel important, for remembering names and details about their lives. When a crew returned from a successful patrol, Donitz would often be there personally to greet them, shaking hands, handing out medals, posing for photographs. He cultivated this image of the caring commander who valued his men, but it was a calculated performance. He needed these young men to trust him completely, to follow his orders without question, even when those orders meant sailing into almost certain death. The psychological toll on U-boat crews was immense. They spent weeks at a time submerged in darkness, breathing recycled air, never knowing if the next moment would bring a depth charge that would crush them. They couldn't shower, they couldn't escape the constant noise of the engines and the creaking of the hull. Some men broke down completely. Others became numb to the horror. Donitz was aware of all this, but he saw it as the price of victory. He believed that German willpower and discipline could overcome any obstacle, even mathematics and technology that proved the U-boat campaign was becoming unsustainable. Because that's what was happening by 1943 and 1944. The Allies had cracked the German naval codes. They knew where the U-boats were. They had developed better sonar, faster escort ships, and long-range aircraft that could hunt submarines from the air. The Atlantic was becoming a graveyard for German submariners. Out of roughly 40,000 men who served in the U-boat force during World War II, about 30,000 died. That's a 75% death rate. the highest of any military branch in the entire war. Donitz knew the odds. He saw the casualty reports every single day, but he kept sending them out. When his own sons served on U-boats, and one of them was killed in action, Donitz grieved privately but publicly called it an honor. He used his son's death as propaganda, as proof of his own commitment to the cause. By evening, Donitz would return to his quarters. He lived modestly compared to other Nazi leaders. No grand palaces or lavish estates, just functional military housing. He would have dinner, again something simple, and then spend the late evening reading reports, writing orders, and planning the next day's operations. He also spent time writing in his diary and composing reports for Hitler. Donitz had a complicated relationship with the Führer. He respected Hitler's authority but often disagreed with his decisions about naval strategy. Unlike some Nazi leaders who feared Hitler, Donitz could speak relatively frankly. Hitler respected him because Donitz delivered results and because he was loyal without being a sycophant. This loyalty would ultimately lead to one of history's strangest moments. In April 1945, as the Nazi regime collapsed and Hitler prepared to die in his bunker, he chose Karl Dönitz to succeed him as the leader of Germany. Not Goebbels, not Himmler, not Goering, Donitz. A naval officer became the last Führer of Nazi Germany. For 23 days, Donitz led what remained of the Third Reich. He operated from northern Germany, trying to negotiate surrender terms and maintain some form of government. But it was all futile. Germany was defeated. The war was over. On May 23, 1945, British forces arrested Donitz and his government. Unlike many top Nazis who committed suicide or went into hiding, Donitz faced trial at Nuremberg. He was convicted of war crimes and crimes against peace. He served 10 years in Spandau prison. Throughout his imprisonment and for the rest of his life, Donitz never truly accepted responsibility. He maintained that he was simply a naval officer doing his duty. He denied being a committed Nazi despite all evidence to the contrary. He expressed no real remorse for the deaths he caused or the regime he served. After his release in 1956, Donitz lived quietly in northern Germany until his death in 1980. He wrote memoirs that portrayed himself as a professional sailor caught up in events beyond his control. Many former submariners remained loyal to him, seeing him as a father figure who had cared about his men. But the historical record tells a different story. Even decades after the war, Donitz attended reunions of former U-boat crews. Old men who had served under him still called him Grand Admiral and treated him with reverence. He signed autographs, posed for pictures, and basked in their admiration. He never apologized for the war crimes committed under his command. He never acknowledged the moral bankruptcy of the cause he had served. Instead, he spoke about duty, honor, and military professionalism, as if these concepts existed in a vacuum, separate from the evil regime he had loyally served. In private conversations recorded by historians and journalists, Donitz continued to defend Hitler's early policies and only criticized the Führer's later military decisions. He claimed he had known nothing about the Holocaust, despite mountains of evidence proving otherwise. He maintained this fiction until his death, refusing to confront the reality that he had been an integral part of one of history's most monstrous regimes. His funeral was attended by hundreds of former Navy personnel, some of whom gave the Nazi salute at his grave, a final testament to the ideology he had never truly abandoned. So what did Karl Dönitz actually do all day? He woke early, studied his maps, and sent young men to their deaths in the cold Atlantic waters. He gave inspiring speeches while enforcing Nazi ideology. He innovated deadly tactics while supporting a genocidal regime. He was not just a military officer following orders. He was a true believer who knew exactly what he was fighting for and never looked back. What do you think? Can someone be a professional soldier while serving an evil cause, or does that make them equally guilty? Let us know in the comments below. And if you found this look into one of history's most overlooked figures interesting, please like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into the past. Thanks for watching.